I'm all about show business.
Oh, okay. Cheers.
Welcome to Portland, Matt.
Thank you, Damien.
In Matt's honor, we're having Hop Stupid.
Thank you for undercutting that.
No, I wanted Hop Stupid just for myself.
So how does this work? Do we talk to each other or to the camera?
To the camera, I
To
guess.
the audience.
Occasional.
Okay.
We do whatever we want.
Yeah.
This is YouTube.
There's rules.
We just finished our first day at the Rose City Comic Con. There's the very cool. Did you like this cover? I thought this was a pretty cool
I like
cover.
it. I was also a little baffled to learn it's in Portland and not in Rose City. So.
Portland is the Rose City, and Stump City, and Bridgetown. They even have, remember I showed you that Portland sign? They made sure to put it there because you know you're in Portland when they have that Portland sign. But we missed the panel with the guy who does the Goon with Eric Powell, so I'm a bit angry at us for that. But we saw a bunch of this is a really good video so far. We saw a bunch of these panels. We're gonna show you what we got, which I don't think either of us got a lot today. Maybe we'll get more tomorrow.
No, I missed out on something I should have grabbed.
It's gone.
Oh, I don't know. I put a trade back in the bin. If it's there tomorrow, it was luck of the draw.
Because you couldn't decide, or because
I felt bad. It was a $5 trade, and when you buy with a credit card, that's basically not giving any money to the small.
At least
company.
you're not buying something for 25 cents with your credit card. I mean, it's their choice, right? Some places will say you have a $5 minimum or something like that.
Try to respect.
Anyway, well, I'll show you what I got, which the little bit of stuff that I got there. So one of the places we went to just had a ton of $5 trades, and I got kind of an eccentric group of trades. I got this Encyclopedia of Wonder Woman, and it says 30 years. 30 years.
So it's old.
That's very old. It's by Michael Fleischer, if anyone remembers him. He was an infamously hacky writer for Marvel and DC. Although he did create Jonah Hex. Michael Fleischer is the creator of Jonah Hex. So it says 2007, so this came out in 2007. So I'm guessing once Michael Fleischer couldn't get scripting jobs anymore in comics, he did this. And then I got a volume of Crazy Cat from the Crazy Cat Sunday comic strips from 1929 to 1930. I assume they were originally published in color, but these are in black and white. But it's a very nice book. And then I got this volume of The Flash. What am I saying? Wait, this is a really bad video. Flash Gordon. I got a volume of Flash Gordon. I've seen Flash Gordon collections before, but I've never seen it in this style. Although I think this is a good layout for. These are confusing ones to look at where everyone's upside down. So anyway, those are the three things I got for $5, and then for $1 a piece, I got a bunch of House of Secrets, which I've already looked through while listening to a Brian Bendis panel.
Your favorite.
And there's lots of cool art in here. Surprising to me, the art that I liked the most was by Ramona Frandon, which I didn't know she was in these. She's like one of the earliest women comic book illustrators. She goes back to the Golden Age.
Yeah.
I think she was often the only woman in those, big studios they used to have in the Golden Age where everyone sat in rows of desks and drew. But she does some really good horror art in here. So I don't really know what these are worth, but I was pretty excited to get them for $1 a piece. So you want to show some of the trades you got?
Yeah, I haven't gotten much. Don't necessarily plan to get a whole ton, but let's see here. I was missing 3 volumes of 100 Bullets, and I have 13 and 12. Now I'm only missing 11. So I'm one trade away from being able to start reading it. I could arguably start reading volumes 1 through 10, but I just can't take that risk.
Can I look?
Yeah, sure.
So they had... was 13 the last?
I believe so. It's the last thing there.
That's a lot of trades.
Well, it's around the... Is
but
kind of
13 is... I guess maybe because it was wrapping up, they put them all in there.
Yeah.
That's a lot to read. I hope you like 100 Bullets after buying 13 trades.
Well, we already have most of it, so at that point, you might as well get the
You've
collection.
already invested your
your
children's inheritance.
It's one of those ones I want to read through no matter what. Got this piece of paper.
Is that...
it's a sale.
A sale. Well, that's a... I want to look at that.
This?
No, about the sale.
Oh, here.
Because I go to that comic book store all the time.
I waited in line the entire Brian Michael Bendis panel to ask one question. I didn't get to because they kept yapping about kids asking recommendations, what to read, whatnot. I had a pressing question about Torso that's been in my mind since I read it over a year ago that I wanted to ask. And I didn't get the opportunity. A little frustrating.
Oh, and you gave me a copy of Torso. I should have had that to show, but it's upstairs.
Yeah. But I got a copy of Powers 8, which is one I already own. And I've been looking for Powers Volume 1, and I can't find it anywhere. But he was handing out stuff for free. Some kid got a drone. Some people got exclusive Guardians of the Galaxy art. And some person got Oreos. I would have taken the Oreos over this, but...
So you got that for free today?
Yeah, so I might just have them
you were one of the people who got it handed to them?
Well, because I was waiting in line, so they just kind of...
So he gave out, cut throughout his...
Everybody who asked a question got a...
And other random people, I think, from the audience, too. He was just giving out presents.
Because that's how you get people to like you, I guess.
Yeah, but he had a very big audience already. I mean,
it's Bendis.
I think the audience already liked him, but he wanted them to like him even more.
Yeah,
I don't think he needed to give out presents, or do you feel he did?
I don't feel he needs to. I could take a cynical bend, but he was trying to give stuff. The way he phrased it at the beginning was he has a bunch of stuff laying around his house, and he just wanted to make some room and figured some people here would appreciate it more. And
a drone? He had a drone?
Yeah.
An unwrapped drone?
I don't know.
Not an unwrapped, a wrapped drone, still in the box that he gave away for free. Those things must not be cheap.
He's rich. I don't know.
Someone probably maybe he's re-gifting.
He said hometown love or something. I don't know. I'm not going to fault him for giving away things to wanted people in a consumerist era.
I guess I don't
know.
Fault him, but it just seemed odd.
Yeah, but I mean, I stuck in line even though I knew I was going to get my question to see what I could swag.
What would your question about Torso have been?
It would have been this. So, how do I word this so not to spoil it? In Torso, there's a lot of very interesting and kind of scary things that happen, and I did a lot of reading after to find out that it was historically accurate because Torso follows Elliot Ness post the Untouchables era. And my question for him would have been how much of Elliot Ness's personal life that was portrayed in the comic actually came from any research versus just kind of what he put in there to make the story work. And that was my question. Did you want to get that tweet?
No, I was going to brush it out of the way.
Oh, okay.
Longbox Review is tweeting us as we speak because we're very important.
Oh, very, very. And then...
and what else did you get? One more thing or two more things?
Two more. Three. Oh. I got Superior Foes of Spider-Man Volume 3. Now I just need Volume 2. But I really enjoyed the first one.
What do you think of this cover?
I like it. It's not your standard stuff, and to just kind of have a group shot but make it their own. I like the fact that they're able to play around with stuff, and that's why I enjoyed that book. So. Oh,
and they're all giving the finger. I didn't realize that first.
Yeah, it's a touch I appreciate. I can relate to.
Yeah.
So.
They're like the kids you hung out with in high school.
Kids I hang out with now. I have a friend that's how we greet each other.
Nice.
Damien very graciously gave me a copy of House of Secrets.
Because I accidentally bought two.
And he was talking about it and I was interested. He had a duplicate. And something to talk about. Not yet though, because I haven't read it. And then I saw this comic Bushido. It's a Top Cow thing, which is Top Cow's hit or miss, but it's rare to see martial art kind of comics, and I've talked about that a lot with Turtles, that I like to see something more like straight martial arts, because I'm kind of getting into that, and not in a manga setting, but in a our side of the pond setting. And here one was, and I didn't know it existed, so trying it out. That's all I got.
The panels, at least to me, it was interesting. Maybe this is a common thing. They all focused on creators. So it was a spotlight on Brian Bendis. We went to a spotlight on Stan Sakai, the artist, the creator of Usagi Yojimbo, and Terry Moore spotlight.
I like the way that they do it. Normally, with a lot of panels, they're very focused on it being kind of punchy, and they'll have panels of like a theme or something. They had that for some Wonder Woman creators that we saw.
Right.
But just giving these notable creators, just some of them are just kind of on the stage alone, or some of them get moderator with them, and that's it. And it's just on them to ask about their work, and that's kind of what you're really there for anyways. Not trying to put any dressing around it, I think, is direct. And I like that more than a lot of what I see in like Denver or C2E2 or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't even know if they did that much of that last year as they did this year. But one flaw seemed to be sometimes the moderator would dominate the direction too much.
Well, there was one moderator.
I mean, I know that's their job, but still somehow.
Well, but there's one moderator that we saw who was talking to Stan Sakai, and then
Terry Moore.
Terry Moore. Tony Moore is his evil brother, I guess.
His evil dead brother.
And he had a question that he asked both of them, and it seemed kind of out of place, and they hung on it for a while, which was basically, well, you're going to adapt any of your stuff to the screen. And it's like, we're here for comics, man.
He asked them both that, right?
Yeah, he asked them both that. And it wasn't just
that.
One question. Like, he had to dig on it. And it's one of those sides of the comic culture right now that I'm not a fan of, because I like comics. It's not to say I don't like movies or TV, but some things, like especially Strangers in Paradise, I don't want to see an adaptation of. Right. Kind of like Preacher, I never wanted to see an adaptation of.
And given that there wasn't enough time for Terry Moore to talk about everything anyway, right when someone else was going to ask a question, the moderator forced the movie issue on.
And they talked about Strangers in Paradise the whole time, which is predictable, but the minute someone brought up, or right before they were going to bring up Echo and Rachel Rising and talk about some of his other work, which I'm more interested to hear him talk about in some ways. Not that I don't love Strangers in Paradise, but I've also heard him talk about that, and it's been years. But there might have been something in Rachel Rising that would have been more interesting to hear about, more new.
Other than that, characters from Strangers in Paradise appear in Rachel.
Yeah, there's apparently a couple.
That was the only mention.
Went over my head. Apparently, so I'll have to look for that.
You have to go back and read everything.
Well, yeah.
But his pitch that he gave very quickly at the end for his new comic sounded like a lot of fun.
Well, it's funny. So, what was the name of it? Garage Girl?
I can't remember. Maybe Garage Girl.
It was like a mechanic.
Or Motor Girl.
Motor Girl, that was it. And there's supposed to be UFOs. She has a
talking gorilla.
Yeah.
That she works with at her junkyard.
And what's odd about this is there's a Colorado artist I know, Sean Tiffany, who does a comic called Oil Can Drive. The main character is a female mechanic, and she has a gorilla accompanist, side character. And there's definitely a lot of crazy sci-fi stuff going on, and I don't know, it's just one of those like, oh shoot, there's this small guy who now people are going to maybe compare and say, oh, well, this is just Terry Moore's. He's been doing this.
Terry Moore,
he's been doing this for years, so
maybe he can piggyback on some publicity there.
I'm hoping. This guy's really talented. He just doesn't know quite how to
promote himself.
I don't even want to say he doesn't know how. He just hasn't found a way to break it big, I don't think. But he does some darn good work, and I've noticed with people who are doing this kind of on the side, kind of waiting for a big break, the minute they do and they're able to really pour themselves into a book because they get paid enough to make it a job early, the quality increases on its own because they finally get the ability to do what they've been wanting to do. So, yeah.
I felt like, I mean, I guess it's tough being a moderator, but like Joshua Williamson was the moderator for Brian Bendis, and I felt like he talked so much and kept interrupting while there was this huge line of people who wanted to ask Bendis questions.
Yeah,
if he had asked less questions, we might have got to most of the people.
Well, and he had some boring questions, is the best way to put it. And there was one person, there was a couple of people in particular who were asking Bendis for reading recommendations, and I was like, really? You know, here's this guy who's done all this amazing stuff, and you're just asking him what to read next? Like, you can turn the person next to you and get a bunch of great recommendations. Just seemed kind of...
But I get more mad at moderators doing
That's
bad
very
questions
fair.
than
That's
people in
very...
the audience doing bad questions.
Yeah.
And there was that... there was a college professor who was the moderator of the Wonder Woman panel, which was not an artist, not a focus on one creator panel, but it was a focus on the current creators working on Wonder Woman.
But talking about the past of Wonder Woman mostly.
Right, and so the professor had this whole thing he obviously wanted to do about the whole history of Wonder Woman, and Greg Rucka didn't really want to do that. That was kind of amusing.
And I had to back up Rucka on it because...
No, I agree. Yeah.
The guy who was asking was saying, like, what was your first encounter of Wonder Woman? Not like, what do you find... what do you find the most interesting interpretation of Wonder Woman, or what inspired you when you do Wonder Woman? It's just, what did you see first, which is not ultimately very interesting. It's like, that could be a quick question. There shouldn't be a lot to go on necessarily, and I don't know. But they spent a lot of time poking at the past of Wonder Woman in
a very selective way, so that they could make the past of Wonder Woman all bad, as if there's been nothing good before them except maybe George Perez, although he was kind of simple.
That bothered me deeply. But yeah, they said like the original creator definitely did some interesting things, and he did. But what was funny was they took a lot of art over decades and took out like a handful of dick jokes basically via art with missiles mostly.
Missiles pointed at Wonder Woman, who's
that was phallic. Something. But what I found funny was they were Boland, the guy who did Killing
Ryan
Joke.
Boland.
Yeah, I have that right. Yeah, he did a lot of covers for Wonder Woman. They were highlighting this one. They said, "Oh, this is gorgeous one," and I'm looking at it. I'm like, that's the same imagery you were just making fun of, and you're highlighting it as okay. If I found it funny that they highlighted something like, "Oh, this is bad," but then they turn around that it's done by this very well-renowned artist, but it was exactly that, and they put it up on the screen there, and I was like, "You guys are." The attention of what they were mocking wasn't quite paid due.
And it seemed like Rucka had some point he wanted to make about Wonder Woman coming out of the bondage scene of the 1940s, but he didn't really... I couldn't tell if that is influencing the way he's going to write Wonder Woman, or whether he's just making an observation.
It was more the way he did write it already, I think. Because
I haven't read his previous run.
I haven't read all of it, but... There's something there, and what he was talking about was if you look into the BDSM scene, which I haven't a ton, but a little, mostly off of Sunstone, honestly. And the idea was how safe you feel with the person if you're submissive to the person who's dominant, whatever. But there's this bit about some villain like throwing a chain at her and being like, "Are you into bondage?" And then she turns around and whips it around on him. It's like, no, liberation. And like it felt clever in the comic, but hearing him talk about it, he just kind of sucked all the kind of clever, just like quick wordplay on it out by just kind of over explaining and trying to detail something that you could tell he is kind of willfully only willing to go so far with as far as research and looking into what works for these people and how it related to Wonder Woman, because he was talking about how the original creator was very much into that, but it wasn't just that he was turned on by it. Like, he was looking into and trying to explore it. I'm like, that's all well and good, but they were trying to take the titillation out of it. And I'm like, if you're trying to talk about someone's kink and you're explicitly taking out the titillation of it, you're missing a large part of what makes that work.
Yeah. The whole, and we didn't make it to the end of that panel. Maybe it got better, but it just seemed like it wasn't going that well. And it may have been no one person's fault, but a bad chemistry between the people. But I didn't, from the, 35, 40 minutes we spent there, I didn't get any sense of what their Wonder Woman vision is or anything.
Right, well, and they were talking about some of the really older comics. Like, we were talking about, they highlighted some Silver Age comic where there's one issue where Steve
Trevor gets powers.
And the moderator said something, oh, well, this, white man, because he needed superpowers to make life easier or something. I was like, hey, dude, it was the Silver Age. Calm down. B, that was probably for an issue or two, and then they were taken
It's never
away.
More than an issue in the Silver Age, if
right.
even a whole issue, maybe a 10-page story.
Right, and so it's like, well, of course, at some point, they forced this character to tag along with Wonder Woman, and they eventually gave him superpowers. That happened to everyone who hung around Superman multiple times, because it was just an obvious story to do. And when you're churning out how'd you put a new idea every time?
Yeah, they had to do a new story idea every time. I mean, there was certain patterns they followed, but...
Right, and I'm not saying it like you couldn't find problematic things with it now, but I think to not have any understanding of where that came from at the time is not any better.
Right. They highlighted George Perez, but other than that, you would think from watching it that the entire history of Wonder Woman was all negative towards women.
Well, and Greg Rucka said that George Perez's run was fairly simple by today's standard, which worries me, because if you look at Perez's run, like, you can just read it as just kind of a comic and just kind of take it on its face. But if you're supposedly well-versed in this and know the mythology that it's pulling from and everything that's going on, there are layers to that comic. It may not be Watchmen, but it is certainly more layered than what he is doing currently.
Right. I mean, I'm the first issue of Perez's Wonder Woman with the origin of the Amazons alone has more in that one issue than anything Rucka's done so far in Rebirth.
I think that one issue has more of a word count than his new Wonder Woman run so far.
Way more. But other than the words, it also just has a
yeah.
lot happening and a lot of thought put into, what the Amazon should really be about.
Right, and not dead dialogue. Like, there are a lot of comics that are very kind of repetitiously worded, and sometimes very purposely so, but that was not one of them. That was purposely a dense read.
Right.
And also finding a way to put that much language in and have the images reflect or add to what was going on every time. And I'm not trying to knock his current run wholly down. I'm just trying to say, compared to what I'd consider to be the definitive Wonder Woman run, it's not quite as good.
Right. So far, anyway.
Yeah, I think trying to hold anything up to the greatest standard of it just doesn't.
Yeah, and there was no mention of the Azzarello Wonder Woman, no mention of any...
Yeah.
Other than Rucka's own run, I think before that they just looked at some of the really most egregious covers of her bending over or something from, I assume, the early 2000s.
Well, they also had a problem with when she was depowered and became more like martial artist, whatnot.
Right, which is always kind of a... To me, that run is actually a pretty good run for its time, but is a political whipping boy just because of political issues with depowering her. But I think in and of itself, it was actually an attempt to add life to a comic that wasn't very popular at the time.
Right, and they also touched on when she worked in a fast food chain, which I guess is considered something of a flop of idea, but I think actually was a bold move. I don't quite remember if it was executed well or not.
Did you read that one?
I think I read an issue of it way back when I the way I compared comics then versus now. Right. I wouldn't.
Well, they were very offended by the idea that Diana would have to learn more about humanity.
which bothered me because
regular our world,
because Superman and Batman wouldn't, but
right,
of course she would.
Right.
Like, it would have been a problem if that was Black Canary and they were doing that for that reason. But Wonder Woman, and it's not learning her to be a human, it's learning to be, that was part of hers dealing with Americana in that way.
Right.
And being a fast food worker in the 90s around kind of the height of Clerks and whatnot felt like there might be something.
Were they
there.
imitating Buffy, who was a fast food worker for a few episodes? Or did that come... Which came first?
I couldn't tell you, but that's a good connection, too.
But I think the general idea is you have this goddess type of character who suddenly has to live with us normal mortals. How does she learn about us? I think it was supposed to be ironic to make her work in a fast food restaurant.
Well, and keep in mind, this is the era where Superman had a mullet. Like,
right.
It was a different time.
Yeah. Anyway, so it seemed like a stacked deck, basically.
Yeah.
But then what were they stacking the deck for? Because they didn't have a clear vision that they presented.
Right. And I don't know. I would have maybe liked to have heard more, but we left to go see Terry Moore speak, which I think was the right decision.
Yeah. And Terry Moore is really interesting. I wish he could have gone longer, actually.
Yeah, it was actually interesting hearing about his past because I hadn't learned so much about his personal past, but knowing that he was in a band and then he was doing video editing and then he kind of went to want to do something his own, partially for his legacy, it seemed like, and be known for something. And that's what got him into comics, because I always had this impression of him being a really fairly introverted guy who had just been toiling away and trying to get something to work in comics, and then got his comic to kind of work, and that's not what happened at all.
Right. And we learned he had a lot of girlfriends in high school.
Yeah, and he was a heartbreaker. His long hair.
Yeah. Well, that's our con report.
Day one.
And it was a lot of fun. We also saw a Longbox review and had dinner with him afterwards with his family. And we'll go tomorrow. You want to say hi before we end the video?
Quack!
That's Quacking Duck, in case you wondered. She went to the con. It was her first convention. She dressed up as Linda Lee. And she's going to go again tomorrow.
Supergirl.
Because Linda Lee is Supergirl.